As we move further down the machine, we can open up the lid. You see the individual working units. This is the end trim station, and it has one motor with two blades on either end to trim the leading and trailing edge. And really the only adjustment you have is this item up here. You loosen the 4 screws, turn that wheel, and that'll adjust the horizontal position of the saw blades to trim closer to the substrate or away from the substrate. And it's really just a trial and error kind of a thing. So just right now it's set pretty good. I think you'll be happy with everything there. Then we have the top and bottom trim stations. And the top and bottom trim stations have 3 separate settings each. One is for the thickness of the edge banding that you're going to see here, which is the first one. And that's going to move the guide shoe back and forth. These trim motors float horizontally, as you can see here. And what we do is we adjust the shoe for the thickness of the edge banding so that the horizontal movement isn't severe. We also have an adjustment to be able to tilt the end trims, which is what most people do on thin tape to get the sharpness of the edge off. And right now it's set for 5 degrees. And the way you make that adjustment is you loosen that handle right there, and you manually pick up or lower the trim motor to the desired angle that you're looking for. We also have an adjustment here on the top, also one just like it on the bottom. This is your top copy wheel that moves back and forth. And if you think of a router bit with a bearing, this is basically the bearing. And then rather than changing the size of the bearing on a router bit to change the profile, we can manually move the position of this copy wheel with this control knob, moving it up and down, basically removing more material or taking off or taking less material. Same 2 adjustments for the bottom trim. We have the in and out of the head that moves it forward and back. We have the shoe adjustment for the thickness of the edge banding. We also have on the bottom the same copy wheel adjustment to increase or decrease the amount of cut. If you're tilting the head, you can adjust the amount of cut either by moving the bit in horizontally with this adjustment, or you could do it with this adjustment. If you are using the trimmers flush and you're setting to the thickness of the edge banding, then you have to make the adjustments only on the top. But if you're beveling like this is set up to do right now, you can adjust with either one to get the desired cut that you're looking for. And then we have the buffing stations. Typically you only use the buffing stations on plastic, PVC, things like that. The buffing stations don't work very well on wood tape. It tends to splinter and the fibers get caught in the edges of the wood tape, so usually you would leave that off. As the wheels wear, you need to bring the motors down closer to the panel, and that's what this knob is here. And then also you loosen the locking bolt on the frame, and then you can move with this knob, you can move the top buffer up and down, and then there's a corresponding crank for the bottom one. You can move it up or down depending on the size of the buffing wheel so that you exert enough pressure on the system. As we get to the end, we have the feed motor. We have an emergency stop button on the end of the machine. We have an adjustable support bar that comes in and out for wider panels. And now we have our control panel. So here's the emergency stop button on the in-feed portion of the machine. When the machine is powered up, the white light will come on to tell you there's power to the machine. The first thing you're going to do is turn on the glue pot heating element. And here is the glue pot control. The green letters are your target temperature, and then the red letters are your actual temperature. Based on the recommendations of the glue manufacturer, you can set the temperature up or down just by pushing these buttons back and forth to get to the desired temperature. Right now it's on 180 degrees Celsius, not Fahrenheit, so that's about almost 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Here we have the feed track to turn it on. Once the machine reaches temperature, you can hit the green button and you can see the feed track is now running. The next button is to turn on the end trim, which is this button right here, and the top and bottom trimmers. You can independently turn these on or off depending on what the operation happens to be. If you don't want any end trim, you can shut just the end trim off and turn on only the top and bottom trimmer. 99% of what you're going to do is probably going to have both the end trim on and the top and bottom trimmer, and then you activate by pushing this button here, and the machine will run. The last button on the end is for your bucket station. You can turn that on and see the light come down for the bucket station. Shut everything off by hitting the red buttons. If you want to turn off the glue pot, you can turn it off and still leave the machine energized. A cold machine will take anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes to heat up the glue pot, depending on your power supply in your shop. The closer you are to 230 degrees power coming into the machine, the faster it's going to heat up. We have 208 in our shop, 3-phase, and it takes a little bit longer. It probably takes about 15 minutes to heat up here. We have an adjustment for the support rail, so if you have wider boards, you loosen this locking device under the in-feed table, and then you can pull the support out to support longer boards. When you're not using it, you can push it back in, lock it down again so it doesn't wander out on you. And here you can see the main switch, air supply connection, and incoming power is coming in right through the in-feed end of the machine. To adjust the thickness of your panel, you have the hand crank with a digital readout in millimeters to change for thickness. We're set at 19 millimeters, which is 3/4 of an inch. If you need to change the thickness, then you have to loosen the beam locking handle, which is this handle right here, and we have one here on the in-feed end, and we also have one on the out-feed end. If you forget to unlock it, especially if you unlock one, you could potentially rack the system. So loosen the two, then go back to the in-feed portion of the machine. Adjust this handle here to increase or decrease the thickness. As you can see here, it's moving in the thicker position. So I'll put this back at 19. And then lock the handles so things don't move on us. Go back to the out-feed end. Lock this handle, and we're ready to go for the desired thickness of the panel.